The second part of this principles discussion deals with the other elements that we had mentioned. So we started last video with advertising, that's paid, non-personal. Publicity, which is not paid, non-personal. It's media coverage, and sport organizations use sports information directors, also known as media relations specialists, to deal with publicity. They also talk about personal contact. Personal contact being also known as personal selling, and adding the human element to it. We're going to pick up with incentives. This is where we left off. So incentives are essentially, the job of an incentive is try to encourage, and you can see the definition on your screen, try to encourage some overt behavioral response. It is, again, a way where you're trying to get consumers to do something, have some sort of behavior. Demand-based promotions are those that are essentially trying to provide a reason. Many times, for example, a price discount, we talked about that in chapter 12, it's providing some sort of reason to purchase. So a demand-based promotion is that of a price discount. However, incentives are those that encourage some sort of consumption. It does not just have to be a price discount. And so while a demand-based promotion at times, such as price discounts, could be considered incentives, just because it's not price doesn't mean it is not an incentive. And so what we're trying to do is provide a customer, and this is where the definition comes into play, represents all the emotional, social, psychological, functional, and financial conditions, that financial being the price, that encourages some overt behavioral response. Again, what the key to this definition is that you're trying to stimulate some sort of swift buyer action. The key to understanding incentives, we'll talk more about that later, is knowing why your customer actually purchases the product and why they don't. And so your job is to ensure this. So really your approach has to have your client in mind. Also, another one is atmospherics. Atmospherics is really all of the efforts that are designed to design the place of consumption or the place of purchase so that it creates a specific cognitive or emotional effect to consumers. This is very similar or relates very closely with place marketing, that is facility management, which we talked about in the previous section. One thing that when we talk about atmospherics is oftentimes dealing with point of purchase, or also known in marketing as POP. Point of purchase are those displays, posters, their signs, or any type of in-store material. And the point of all of these things, signs, posters, in-store material, is that they point toward a purchase site. In other words, it is a location within the physical setting that's trying to drive traffic to an actual place where you would purchase. So why are these products so important? Why are they so unique? As we know, the sport product, as it deals with atmospherics, is that we simultaneously produce and consume the core product that is the sport. And so the few things that we have control over is the preparation of the amenities, the preparation of the sport facility. So you have to take into mind the customer's desires, because if a customer wants, for example, nostalgia, they would probably be more concerned with an atmosphere that values tradition. However, if you look at let's take, for example, the San Antonio Spurs. I would say they were probably more traditionalist in the way they play basketball and their overall brand image. You compare that with another club such as Golden State Warriors, or when LeBron was with the Miami Heat, which are very different cultures, different communities. They have different thoughts about how their atmosphere should be. However, for the most part, most sporting events, atmospherics needs to be upbeat, but it all relates back to place marketing. Another one is licensing. Licensing is one of the major sport revenues for sport organizations. So let me show you this. This is the IOC website. The IOC is the International Olympic Committee. They're the governing body for Olympics worldwide. They receive a lot of money from different sources. The four major revenue sources, and this is pretty much for most sport organizations. It varies based on the type of organization about how much is received in certain areas. But the Olympic marketing revenues, majority of the revenue comes from two areas: broadcasting rights fees, so money received from places like the NBC Sports, who has the U.S. rights to broadcast the Olympics in the United States and its territories, and then 45% in sponsorships. So 45% would be a part of what they call the TOP program, or it's known as the Olympic Partnership Program. 45% of that revenue comes from sponsorships. So majority of the revenue for the Olympics comes from those two areas. However, 3% of that comes from licensing, which is where we're talking about here. So it's the right to use, not by a sponsor, but if somebody wanted to produce apparel or any type of manufactured good or use the Olympic symbols or any of the terms, they would have to pay a licensing fee to the IOC in order to do that. And 5% of their revenue comes from ticketing. And so if we look at back at the licensing, it is one of the major revenue sources. Some organizations make more money off of licensing than others. It kind of depends on the demand for that brand. But it is defined as when an entity outside of the organization uses that organization's symbols for profit. And so anytime I'm wearing licensed apparel right now, you can kind of see it, SFA. SFA, when I bought this shirt, let's say it was $20. SFA receives, I believe, a 10% licensing fee for any apparel that has SFA related to it. And so that means $2 of my $20 that I spent actually went back to SFA for the right to use that logo. Obviously, SFA doesn't make a ton of money off of their licensing. It makes a good chunk of money. Anytime you see any apparel that has SFA on it, it is licensed and SFA got their cut. Or it was produced illegally, which is very rare in today's society. But in other words, examples of licensed apparel would be a hat or a t-shirt, a shoe, a jacket, whatever it is that's out there that has the logos on it. Another one is sponsorship. Like I said, we don't spend much time. We briefly talked about sponsorship and place marketing because it does have a big impact on how facilities are operated and managed. But it is a very large part of the promotions mix. Like we said in the ILC, it is one of the major revenue sources for the ILC as well as broadcasting rights. And so we have to view sports sponsorship as something that's very important. We know, and I guess the rhetorical question here is, why have corporate marketers viewed sports sponsorship as an appropriate vehicle for developing brand image and capturing the customer loyalty exhibited among sport fans? Really is value added is the answer to that. The value that the partnership with the sports brings to a corporate image. Customers are very loyal to their sponsors. So for example, look at NASCAR. Several studies have been done to show the loyalty of NASCARs to their driver sponsors. I'm making this part up, but let's just say you have a driver who is the Lowe's driver, meaning his car is primarily sponsored by Lowe's. Fans of that driver, meaning that's their favorite driver, will go out of their way to try to find a Lowe's and shop at it because they want to support the sponsor who supports the driver. And the same is true, they'll go out of their way to avoid the competition of the sponsor of their driver. So in that circumstance, they would go out of their way to skip by and not go to Home Depot, even if it's across the street. And so consumers are very loyal. We found that out through a lot of different sports, and a lot of that comes back to social identity theory, where consumers try to associate themselves with a brand. They want to be seen as part of the in-group, and therefore they want to support those that support them, meaning sponsors. We don't talk much about sponsorship in this class. You need to know what it is and the like. But in sport sponsorship class, Marketing 362 at SFA, we talk extensively about sponsorship principles, about the sales process and activation. The last one of the promotions mix for the contemporary sport product is community relations. Really, we're talking about a general term known as public relations. Public relations has basically three subparts to it. Public relations is really the interactive marketing communication strategy that really seeks to create a variety of mediums, meaning outlets, that are designed to convey the organization's objectives to the target market, in order to garner some sort of support. In other words, it can include a lot of different things, and that is corporate public relations, marketing public relations, and this overall idea of community relations. So let's start with corporate public relations. These are non-sales oriented public campaigns. For example, we're just trying to be a good citizen. If you've ever heard of a company say that, they're really taking pride in the community, so to speak. That's corporate public relations, those types of messages. If they're sending the message of a marketing public relations, we're really looking at integrating sales and marketing efforts into an overall public relations campaign. So this is providing awareness for the corporation or the firm for social, political, and economic environments. We're trying to affect opinions of the consumer, of the public, or opinion leaders, and really we're done to influence attitudes as it relates to the community. So corporate public relations, you're basically saying I'm trying to be a good citizen for my community. Marketing public relations is you're tying it into your sales campaigns and marketing campaigns to try to increase revenue for the organization. And then the last one is community relations. And really this is the process of interaction or a connection between the sport organization and the community. And essentially we're trying to show our target market within the community that we have a pride in the community and we do things to give back. So there's basically been three ways what this has been implemented. The first way has been through the league. So you could take an example as the NBA Cares. That's a league-wide community relations type of activity. A team level is the second way. And so a team sponsoring a reading program, for example, in your community, that is a team sponsored. And the third way is player. And so an individual player has a foundation or spends time and money and effort to try to raise awareness for some sort of community issue. So the three ways were league-wide, team, and player. Really the key to community relations is that they're garnering attention toward a cause while at the same time attracting goodwill toward the organization within the community. And really the whole point is demonstrating goodwill and creating grassroots programs where people believe in a cause as well as the team as being part of the community. There are a lot of jobs in sports that help this element of the promotional mix. So hopefully this helps you give you a good picture of some principles of sport promotion. We'll spend the next couple sections on those that are probably, I wouldn't say more important, but have a greater influence on our marketing campaigns and specifically where a lot of jobs are located.